So today I want to talk about the Tops MSK 2.5, all right? This is basically a little, Bushcraft style neck knife. Very cool. Tops as a company, I've always enjoyed their stuff. They have quite a bit of variety. Overall, good quality knives. Prices are very decent as well, considering what you're getting. So this was a very popular knife for a while, and it took me a little bit to get one in a trade, but finally did, started using it. Used this one quite a bit. Actually, this one came with me camping, went camping with Christina for 3 days. And this is, the neck knife I had on me the whole time, so got a fair amount of use. A lot of different woodworking stuff. I did some whittling projects. I just kind of debarked some different twigs and sticks and stuff. Broke down a little bit of kindling with this as well. Did some light batoning, even though we only have a 3-inch blade here. It was able to comfortably baton through, smaller twigs and such. So as you can see, there are 2 of them here. All right, this is the one I'm going to do the review on because this is the one I actually used. However, not too long after I got this, of course, I got one in a BATTLEBOX, all right? But this one is a limited edition version. There are very, slight differences between them. The biggest thing is the price, all right? The Tops MSK 2.5 sells for anywhere from $65 to $75, just depends on which version, because there are a couple different versions. This one is $100, all right? Just the coloration, the back says current 1776. This one has white liners. This one obviously has red liners. This one's actually a little bit thinner. All right, I think I mentioned that when I did the BATTLEBOX. All right, you can see how thick this one is compared to this one. All right, also this happens to have a brass eyelet for the, the tubing that goes where your lanyard is, from lanyard hole. This one looks to be aluminum. All right, so just, slight differences. Again, limited version, which is only available through BATTLEBOX's website. So even though this version costs $100, I'm still calling this knife a, $70 knife, all right? Because that's what most of the versions are going to cost you. So yeah, and as far as this being a little bit thinner, it feels nice in the hand and stuff, but to be honest, I like this one being a little bit thicker, all right? And at the end of the video, I'm going to do a little weight comparison between the two because I didn't see any weights online at all. All right, so we're going to figure that out together. So getting back to this knife, all right, take a look at the blade here. You can see it is two-tone. So we have black finish, and then of course, once they sharpen it, we just have that bare edge. All right, MSK standing for Mini Scandinavian Knife or Scandi Knife. All right, that's referring to the style of grind on here, which has a 0 edge. All right, so I don't know if I can show this very easily. But if you're not familiar with Scandinavian ground knives, basically this is sharpened from here all the way out. There's no secondary bevel. It's just one angle. All right, now on here you can see as the light reflects, it almost looks like there's a secondary bevel, but there's not. It's just kind of rounded at that point. Now, if you're not familiar with the Scandinavian ground blades or 0 edges, it's a little tricky to sharpen, all right? And before I get into that, I just want to mention this is 1095 carbon steel, all right, which is also much preferred for, outdoor woodworking knives, bushcraft style knives. The carbon steel holds a really nice edge. It's really, really easy to sharpen, all right? That's why people prefer it. The only downside is it is able to rust. And as you can see from this being used, there's a patina on here, okay? It's a natural form patina. If I were to neglect this, just, use it got wet, just leave it, stick it back in the sheath wet, it would probably rust out. All right, so there is a little bit more attention that's needed with the carbon steels, of course, but they're just awesome and much preferred, again, for, bushcrafting type stuff. Now, as far as sharpening these Scandinavian ground blades, it is definitely tricky, especially if this is like your first one. It's not like a traditional knife when you're sharpening at a single angle, okay, because the edge is rounded. If you're using something, like a stone, you have to, as you're doing your pass, come up. I don't know if you could tell what I'm doing here, but as you're, passing, you're rolling the edge at the end because it's rounded. That's very hard to keep a consistent angle in doing that, right? Maybe you go too much. Now, you just, sharpen your sharp edge away. You've rounded the actual edge, right? So it's very, very tricky. So the biggest pro tip I can give you guys is to not have to sharpen your knife by continuously stropping it. All right, and I'm not talking about like some people have the, strop sets, a piece of leather that's mounted to a wood block. Those are great. They look kind of like, regular traditional bench stones for sharpening. Those are fine for normal knives, but for the 0 ground edges, I would definitely recommend like an old style barber strop, okay, because it has give, long, strip of leather. Usually it's mounted to a piece of canvas on the back, and there's like a hook. You can hook it into the wall or, shop or wherever you happen to want to do it. And the idea behind that is that it gives, okay? So as you're, let's assume this is the strop, as you're rubbing the knife across it to do your passes, okay, it's giving with the knife. It's actually, you know, creating a round edge. So that's my best advice for you guys, is to maintain your edge, not to let it get too dull where you have to sharpen it. Once you get into sharpening, there's a couple techniques like the Mousepad technique. All right, the Mousepad has give. You can do different, you know, grits of sandpaper, really fine sandpaper you can get from like AutoZone or something, you know, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, things like that for actual sharpening of a zero edge. But again, for me, totally fine just keeping it stropped up. Very, very simple. And for I have a couple different strops, but my main strop that I use for all my knives, it doesn't even have like a green or white compound. I use Flitz metal polish on a leather strop, an old style barber strop, and it works beautifully. It works wonderfully for all different types of knives, including this Scandi blade. All right, after my trip, it did need a lot more passes than I normally would do. I would say an average knife, you just use it a couple times throughout the day. Maybe I'll do 10, 15, 20 passes on either side. I had to do like 100 passes to get this thing back to where it was nice and sharp. All right, if I could show you here, you can see it's shaving sharp, okay? So just a little tip, stropping really, really helps, all right? So you actually have to avoid sharpening this knife because it's difficult to sharpen. As far as like ergonomics, I like it a lot. Again, this one's a little bit fatter, all right? So it's just a little bit, I don't know, heftier, chunkier in the hand as opposed to this version here. When you're resting your thumb, there's obviously more. There's more handle here to rest. There is jimping on the back here. This is a downside. I normally like jimping, but because I use this knife so much, the constant pressure of my thumb on here, it's aggressive enough where it started to get a little uncomfortable. All right, so I found myself like holding the back of the spine here, especially with like push cuts and stuff. It's one of those things, most people, if you're not using it really, really hard all the time, if you're not out literally camping like I was doing and playing around with, you know, different wood stuff, it's probably not gonna be a problem for you, but if you do intend on using this a lot, that would be a little bit uncomfortable. If you have gloves, that's totally fine. Actually, in this particular camping trip, I did not bring my gloves. I do have a set that I bring for stuff like that, but just using it with bare hands, after a while, it's a little uncomfortable. It didn't cause a blister or anything like that at all. It's just, you know, noticeable. When you're constantly rubbing on something that has ridges, obviously it becomes uncomfortable. G10 scales on here. I do like the red liners. It's pretty cool. I like the white ones on this even better. I think the white really stands out. But yeah, just a nice little touch on the handle here. All right, obviously you can see there is a lanyard hole. Did throw a little piece of cordage on there because you can see I get a full 3-finger grip. There's a major pointer finger choil here. All right, then there's another little dip for your middle finger. Ring finger is just kind of hanging on the edge. It never really fell off. It was secure on there for a 3-finger grip. But again, having just a little piece of paracord here with a knot, it just gives my pinky something to hold on to. All right, if that was not there, it's really not an issue. You can still get, you know, a good enough grip on this to use it. All right, so I'm zooming in a little bit here. You can see there is some hardware on here. Those are just Allen head screws. There's 2 on either side, all right, for those scales. All right, so I want to give you guys a weight on this as well as find out for myself because I've yet to weigh this. All right, 2.81 ounces. All right, let's try that again. Make sure we're at 0. 2.81, just out of curiosity. I want to see, since it has thinner scales. It is 2.37. All right, so a little lighter. Yeah, 2.37. All right, how about that? So just so you guys know, if you're interested in that particular one, it is actually lighter. So yeah, I mean, overall, I really like this knife. All right, but I'm gonna say this about it. I think this is awesome for its intended purpose of bushcrafting. Okay, it's a really cool option to have around the neck as a neck knife. Something like this, traditional puko knife. All right, extremely comfortable. Like maybe I'll do a separate video on this. Obviously more capable with that larger blade. Having a neck knife, it's the convenience of having it around your neck, but generally speaking, it's going to be small, okay? So it's limited in what it can do. This is awesome for woodworking, okay? But you have to really think about the scenario in which you're going to be using this knife. If you're out on a hiking trail, you know, doing wood stuff, camping, whatever the case may be, you're probably going to have something that's larger and dedicated for that task. This is the convenience of it hanging around your neck. All right, so the big point I want to make with this is I love this knife and it was really fun to carry when I was camping. outside of camping, I wouldn't choose this to be my first option for a neck knife just because that zero edge is hard to maintain. It really is compared to a traditional grind. It's just something that, you know, a lot of people might struggle with and have an issue with, and once it goes dull and you can't put an edge on it, it's really, really frustrating. Now, of course, you can always just modify it, you know, and in fact, I know a few people have done that because they couldn't successfully sharpen a Scandinavian ground blade. They literally just put a second bevel on it, called it a day, and then it's good to go. So obviously, if that's not an issue for you, then that's certainly an option. But overall, I mean, it's comfortable. My only issue is with a lot of use, and I'm talking a lot of use. I was camping. All I was doing was using my knives all day and, you know, fiddling around the campfire and stuff. That was a little bit of an issue, a little bit of discomfort. I don't think it would be an issue for most people. I think moderate use, even if you did want to just carry this as a neck knife, you know, as an EDC or something, I don't think it's going to irritate your thumb or anything like that. So for the around $70 price tag, I think it's a really cool option. It's really nice. There's obviously a very, very small market for bushcraft style neck knives. Let's talk about the sheath for a second here. This has amazing, amazing retention, okay? Now this is unrelated to this knife because you guys aren't gonna get it like this, but when I got it in trade, I got it with this bank line on here, okay? You can see this is a thinner cord. I'm used to 550, I'm used to ball chain, you know, necklaces and stuff. Because this has so much retention, it takes quite a bit of force to pull it out. I mean, you can hear audibly just how this snaps in. It's loud. It's a very, very solid snap, all right, which means you need a lot more pressure to pull this out, okay? So because I had this thinner cord on here when I was at the campsite and stuff, and I specifically saved it for the video. Obviously, I always carry paracord when we go camping too, so I could have swapped it out then. But I just wanted to keep it for testing purposes. But every time I pull this knife out, all right, at least maybe the first dozen times, this thing would dig into my neck. It was horrible because there's so much pressure that's needed. So eventually, after I realized that wasn't going to work out, I would just hold the sheath with the other hand, you know, when pulling it out. All right, but just a quick note in general for all knives, all right, this bank line, it's nice because it is thinner, but that does, you know, dig in and cut into, you know, the neck as far as neck knives go. All right, but the retention is just crazy on these knives. This version as well, even though these sheaths are different. You can see that on the BATTLEBOX version, it's a lot shorter here. There's a lot more of the knife in the sheath, but they have pretty much the same retention. Now in this one, there's a little bit of flare here, but it doesn't really work as like a thumb, because normally when it flares out there, you'd use your thumb, all right, to push on it, but there's so much pressure built up. And this is, I wouldn't say sharp at all, but it's not flared out properly. That little thumb thing doesn't work, all right? I wouldn't even use it. Still takes a lot of pressure to pop this one in and out. So there you go, guys. I am definitely a fan of it. It wouldn't be my first choice for an urban environment, but if you're out in the wilderness and stuff, it is a really cool one to have, especially if you're doing some different woodworking, you know, with your neck knife. That zero edge is a little bit harder to maintain. If you guys don't know, one of my favorite neck knives, the Cold Steel Spike series, those also have a zero edge, okay? That's why they're so sharp. But to maintain that, you have to do it properly, all right? So something to keep in mind. But yeah, I mean, like the Spike, I prefer, obviously I do, because I do wear it out and about, suburban areas, you know, shopping, you know, hanging around, stuff like that, as opposed to something like this, which I think is a more dedicated, you know, camp or hiking style neck knife. So anyway, you guys let me know what you think down in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow with a brand new video. Take care.